Welcome, everybody. Here we are for CreateAWorld. And Dr. Heather Hunt has really graciously agreed to join us here to help sort out some questions that I know I'm finding them to be really important. So I'm thinking that a lot of other people will too. Heather, would you like to talk about your practice, like introduce yourself a little more so people really get a sense of?
Sure. So my name's Heather Hunt, and I'm a chiropractor and functional medicine practitioner, and I also love cranial sacral therapy up in Nevada City, California, a little town in the foothills. I am the daughter of a chiropractor, and so I grew up with this holistic health system in my family. And I now that I'm older and I see what a gift that is, it really has informed who I am and how I practice and how I live in my body and view health and everything. And I've been in practice 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome. What is functional medicine? What does that mean?
Functional medicine is sort of an alternative medicine, though a lot of practitioners from multiple specialties practice it. So everything from doctors to chiropractors to naturopaths. And basically it's just a broader delve into the body to really look at systems and how everything works together. So not to just focus on one area, but look at the whole picture together, and then also include things like adrenal health and different forms of gut health, different forms of testing that might not be offered by mainstream doctors unless they're specialized in functional medicine. And then it's also a narrowing of blood reference ranges of what's considered normal, and narrowing that to look at what's optimal and what's functional, what's healthy for the body instead of what's just free of disease.
Wow, that's a whole conversation right there. We could do a whole episode on that. Okay, well, I would like to delve into that more, but I'm going to set it aside because I want to focus on, what we talked about that we want to do for today. So
yeah,
I'm on a journey towards being healthy and well, and I'm finding that journey to be complex, not only from the point of view of, like when you talk about functional medicine, I think that might be perfect. Like every system of my life is involved. It's not linear. It's not just, stop eating sugar to help your glucose level. It has to do with then how all kinds of things about how I set up meals, how much movement do I do. It's involves all the systems, social, emotional, physical, mental, all of it. It's way more complex than I realized it would be. I'm not backing off, but it has been part of why I've done a lot of stop-start, because it gets complex. And wow. Okay. And for me, I've said getting well is just not for the faint of heart. But and I think that's true. It certainly is for me. It's that's one of the areas I've had to deal with, is getting faint of heart in the face of what it takes. But being healthy is so then if it's not for the faint of heart, then how many of us stop at a certain point before wellness is complete or actually present?
Right.
And so that's the first part we're going to talk about. The second part is how different is getting well and healthy when you're in a spiritual awakening or becoming conscious and aware, or actually hitting that point where you're beginning to be trauma-free. That's the second one. And then how to partner with the medical system.
Okay.
Both people like you, Heather, that are, I call you alternative generally. I put you in that bucket. And then the more traditional allopathic. And right now I'm working with a man named Michael, Michael, who's an Ayurvedic person. And in 3 months of working with him, I'm getting a lot of results, But of course I have to have my allopathic physician as a backup. And I've needed an allopathic physician anyway for part of my health concerns. And I think I've been confrontational. I think I have discovered how much I don't trust the medical system. I think sometimes there's good reason for it. Sometimes there's not. So I'm going to ask you to talk about how do I be a good patient? And I don't really particularly want to. I want the whole responsibility to be on the medical professional.
Right.
But how do I be a better patient, more cooperative, so forth? So those are the areas. And I'm going to let you start where you would like to start, and then we'll just weft and weave together.
Well, anyone that knows me at all knows I'm a compulsive note taker. So I'm jotting. If you see me looking down, jotting. Okay, good. So I will go back to the beginning of what you were asking. I think they're all very important points, and so I'll try not to forget anything, but we can just open this up into conversation.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that's interesting is to think about what is wellness and well-being, and what does that mean to you and to us? How do we hold that? Because I think it's quite personal. It's very much formed by the reality we were born into and the culture we're a part of, right? I always love going to the museums in Europe and looking at what the beautiful woman's body was in the 1800s. And truthfully, I have much more of that body than the thigh gap body of today, And so to see how these things change over time and are very culturally based is important when we look at well-being. And for me, well-being is really feeling at home in my body and feeling embodied in it and feeling my life force energy flow through. And to feel comfortable and at home in my body, I have to maintain a certain weight. I have to eat a certain way. I have to get a certain amount of movement. But these are all things that, like I said, I was very privileged to grow up in a very supportive, healthy environment. So I knew these things from when I was little. And that's not the norm. And so I think the norm is, how do we learn these things, and what do you hold well-being to be? And how does that happen from a healing from the inside out way, like where your body is informing you, that's not working anymore. The body doesn't lie. If you eat something, you feel terrible, that's your body telling you so,
Wow.
But these are all little steps that we have to take. But just really, first of all, thinking about what is well-being for each of us, and what do we want out of our bodies and our relationships with our bodies, because they are our vehicle for this life, and they are our homes. And how do we want to treat them, look at them, view them, be in them? It's very, there's a lot of cultural pressure, but it is ultimately our free will and our choice.
Wow.
Once we gain awareness of that.
All right. So you've already said a bunch of things I'd like to ask some of. So
Okay.
How did you, I understand you were raised in this, but it seems different than having an experience of contrast.
Right.
Like, how do I want to ask that? So it sounds to me like you grew up in here's what wellness is, and this is how you learn it, maintain it.
Mhm.
You know, even within your household, everybody's got their unique physical composition, but also your social, emotional, all that spiritual, everything. But what was the contrast? Because I came from not wellness, so I didn't have a contrast of, oh, here's wellness,
Right.
until suddenly things were breaking down enough that it's
Right.
like, okay, this isn't it. I haven't been at home in my body. I'm finding it very irritating to discover how much maintenance, not just the effort it takes to get well, but then there's all this stuff. You can't just get well and leave it, move on to what's next. There's all this maintenance. I didn't know that. I'm kind of having some trouble making peace with that.
Yeah.
And then the personal choice part, I'm not sure that's out. The talk of it is in popular culture, like in the ads and things that get out there, but as an actual reality, I don't think that's true. I mean, I don't think people know they have a choice about I could get well or not, especially people with, like in the food deserts or really difficult situations, not so privileged. How healthy do I want to be? You know, those kinds of things. And I have a very, you know, those little goddess figures that were discovered archaeologically. I have a very goddess body.
Right. The Earth Mama.
I don't know that it's ever going to be different. It wasn't that way when I was in my 20s, you know, teens and 20s. But after kids, I got a goddess body. May not ever be different.
Yeah. And, you know, when I'm listening to you, so for me, the contrast started happening when I was like in high school and started seeing other people around me and how the choices they were making around their bodies. And reading Glamour magazine and, you know, just starting to be really exposed to cultural ideas of what we were supposed to be, you know, what it's supposed to look like. And then getting older too, you know, I'm not that I'm old, but I'm 45 and I've had 3 kids and bodies are changing.
Yeah.
You know, like I have certain things now I have to manage that I didn't have to until more, you know, the last 5 or 6 years, just because I'm older. So, as far as though, I mean, I recognize my privilege. It's an incredible privilege. And I try to use that every day to help other people. And listening to what you are saying is, I think just going back to really respect and awe of the body, because for the most part, people can like what I would consider kind of trash their bodies. And the body still is like maintains incredibly. And so people in your experience or in food deserts and things can get to a certain point where maybe their bodies go, this isn't working anymore. But usually it's a long time after the body hasn't really been fed well or taken care of well. And so I think we need also to really honor our bodies for how well they've done until we get to the point that they're kind of letting us know you can't continue in this way. And so sometimes it's a choiceless choice, right? Where you have to make changes because your body isn't going forward the way you've been doing things. And maybe that's more where you've, you know, there's different ways people fall into this. There's, but definitely, I understand what you're saying as far as not feeling like the choice is hard and not feeling always like there is a choice, but at some point the body will force a choice. And my goal is to try to help people before it forces a choice that is like a disease, right? Because of a disease.
But, you know, I'm a little older than you are. So like I'm 63. So I began to notice that there was a lot of oh, it's normal to have these diseases. Oh, you're
Right.
getting older, these are the things. You slow down, you can expect to have this, you can expect to have that. There's like in my perception, or in this where I travel, there's the expectation of your
Absolutely.
body is going to break down. It's normal to have these diseases. And I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I love that you just said that, because so that's where my training in chiropractic and functional medicine, and just really looking at the function of the body, and my dad, especially, his indoctrination in my head, um, you know, I absolutely agree. And I feel like my goal always is to be able to bridge alternative holistic medicine with allopathic. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law are both doctors. And so that's really fascinating, because I talk a lot to them. I have a lot of doctors and nurses as patients and friends. And my husband is a trained scientist, PhD. And so it's really important to me that I can bridge, and that what I say makes sense to them from an allopathic perspective. But what they say sometimes is like insane. It just, for me, it's very challenging, because it is oftentimes based in that framework of, oh, well, you're 40, so of course you're going to need to be on an acid blocker, because everyone has acid reflux by the time they're in their 40s, and I'm shocked, because my training is that the body is, so this is going back to well-being, and what do you hold well-being? What do you hold the body to be capable of? I mean, the body is capable of miracles. It's working in homeostasis to balance every single second. And it is overall doing a phenomenal job with what it has been born into, right? And so one of my favorite stories was this old cowboy came in to see my dad. I was in my training in chiropractic school, and his hip was bugging, like really hurting him, and he couldn't ride his horses anymore. And for him, that was game over, right? Like, if I can't ride my horses, what's worth, my life is basically its meaning. And he had gone to his doctor, and the doctor said, well, you're getting older, just take Advil, ibuprofen. And he was just devastated. And he came to my dad, and my dad said, well, if you're just getting older, why don't both your hips hurt? It's an imbalance.
Yeah.
So how first of all, absolutely it is not, quote, normal to have pain, to have diseases, to have things like that on a daily basis without good reason. I mean, but don't expect it. Don't treat it as something that, because you're a certain age and most Americans have these things or whatever, or that you've had a diagnosis, don't expect that that's going to be static, or and this is where you, in your field of specializing in the mind, is really, really important, because we can use our mind to change our body.
Say more about what you mean by that.
Well, just the way
Please.
we think even about well-being, right? So if you think, Deb, about your framework of my body is amazing. It is a temple. It is constantly working on my behalf to give me the absolute best home in this lifetime. I was born into a reality of separation where a lot of what we're born into goes against life, right? People aren't kind to each other. Our society is based on hierarchy and white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism that is focusing on scarcity and wealth over human life and human life quality, right? So we were born, even though I love our country and I feel so fortunate to be born where I was born, in the time I was born, and I think I probably haven't had it easier any other time or place, but it is really challenging what we're born into, right? Mm-hmm. And our body is still working for the most part.
Wow.
But if we change the mindset and use the mind to instead focus on vitality and health and well-being instead of deficiency, what I call body as deficient or body as machine, which is sort of even this is another conversation, but even in functional medicine, the body is still viewed as deficient in a lot of ways. So I'm making vitality medicine. I'm working on something called vitality medicine as a project, to really centralize vitality, because even in alternative medicine, there still isn't, in my mind, the honor and respect given to the body that it's due. So just for you to think about, instead of, I don't know, just to reframe of this, like, instead of the body being cumbersome and something that is a job, but it's like, it's your ally, it's your partner. And how do you be in relationship with it in a way that you see it acting on your behalf, and then mutually you act on its behalf? And that becomes the framework of how you come into the world, think about it, talk to your doctors about it, etc.
But that is not automatic, or it hasn't been for me.
No, it's revolutionary.
Yes. And somebody at some point said to me, you walk like you're dragging your body around like a sack of flour. This was years ago. And I was like, what? Well, I understand that now.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand it now. But I still have that kind of conflict of, it should be static. I've accomplished this. It should stay put, like putting a pin in it. It should just stay put, because I have other things to think about and focus on.
Right.
I'm not in the part where it's all a flow, that taking care of the body is what allows me to focus on other things. I'm just coming to, and then activating that. And I did notice a while ago, not too long ago, actually, given everything of my lifetime, it is kind of shocking that the body's still functioning and half decently, considering the different diagnoses I've had in the last several years.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't yet call myself healthy, or probably be assessed at that place yet. But given it is really remarkable. But that's one journey right there. And then you said something that had me realize, there's just so many mixed messages. There's you can expect this at your age, just take Advil, kind of, and without like honoring that cowboy, how devastating that must be if he couldn't ride his horses. Right. That's his whole life. It isn't just, take Advil. That is like, just change the spark plug, and the mechanistic is what I mean. Yeah. Without, then how's his despair affecting his body? How's his, that's what I'm just beginning to come into. Right. As a psychologist, how do people's responses to life, circumstances in life, dreams, hopes, how does all of that affect the body? What is the partnership? So I'm just like, and nutrition, I'm just at the tip of the iceberg. I'm at the mechanistic part of just eat this because you're supposed to. Making peace with food prep, which I haven't accomplished yet, and preparing the food well, the time it takes to cook. Oh my heavens. Mm-hmm. So it's really, and then like, just, I'm going to shift over into partnering with the medical profession just by, I've taken potassium because it's a good thing to take. Okay. But I didn't know how important it was to heart health. To me, it was kind of like eat your banana so you don't get leg cramps, It was that level of lack of understanding, I suppose, thinking I had arrived somewhere, thinking I had good knowledge, and coming to find out that's basically preschool level, But I didn't get taught by my medical doctor how important potassium is, and that how much that could make a difference in one health condition.
Right.
And so I'm going to just say it this way, so you'll get the picture, people. I'm stuck with an allopathic doctor. I don't know how to look for another one. I don't know how to interview doctors. I have a confrontational attitude from a lot of lack of trust of a lot of different occurrences over the years. It's kind of my nature anyway. I'm a little bit feisty anyway. I'm not prone to being, more gentle. If I get my dander up, and I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that's what I recognize. So here's the latest is, why didn't she tell me? Not even my cardiologist told me about potassium and potassium-rich foods and how eating it through the food would help the overall health. So I'm right back to, okay, it's now proof that I can't trust my doctor, but I'm stuck with having to have a doctor.
Yeah.
So let's
Well,
just shift there.
okay. Where we sort of started this piece we're on now is really that of you and how you're thinking about it. And so I just wanted to presence that, you are a psychologist, you are great with the mind, right?
But not my own necessarily.
Well, but how do we use our mind as ally, just like we use our body as ally to go forward with all of this? And how do we use our mind to start gaining more connection with our body, right? Because I think mind here, what I'm talking about is mental mind, because we could talk about multiple aspects of mind.
Mm-hmm.
But for most people, when they think mind, it's like mental perception and mental thinking, which we're largely stuck in this culture. And when I put my hands on somebody, usually when I put my hands on their head is usually all I can feel is their head, and then they're disembodied from about like here down,
Mm-hmm.
Which is a problem with the thing I really want to emphasize is this isn't a personal problem. This is a systemic problem. It's a cultural problem. It's a problem with the realities we were born into, and also we then insidiously perpetuate, right? Which is a place
exactly.
I'm interested in,
Exactly. So how do I be trained? I need to be trained to be a good partner with my doctor.
Well, I would say even before that, how do you be trained to be a good partner in your own body? And how do you hold wellness in your body? What are your goals? And then, like for me, my goal is to be able to keep doing the activities that I love doing, to be as pain-free as possible, to focus on longevity and vitality. So really, what are your goals? My goal is not to weigh a certain amount or get to the gym these many days or never eat sugar and gluten. Those are not my goals. They're not realistic for me. So really focusing on what your goals are, I think is an important step. And then once that framework is in place, then we can be a good patient, because then we have what we want out of it. You have to know what you want out of your relationship with your doctor, right? And so maybe that's a good communication where your mental mind can be satisfied, right? What they will listen to you and you say, these are my concerns, these are my goals. How can you help me with those? And just really having that place of agency in ourselves, because I think a lot of people get intimidated by doctors, which we know things like the white coat syndrome. It's true. And my relationships with people in the mainstream medical world, they're the first to admit the system is broken. We have multiple broken systems in our culture, right? Education, mental health. political systems. I mean, the thing that's kind of good about broken systems is we can rebuild them. They will break up, they will break down, you know.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that a lot with mainstream medicine, which I think is why a lot of people are turning towards alternative healthcare practitioners. However, that costs money, you know, so you have to be a certain amount of resource. But so for instance, what I've learned from my friends and colleagues in mainstream medicine is it's a broken system. I spend a third of my time doing notes and charts. I'm not allowed to spend more than 5 minutes with my patient, or else I'm reprimanded by the higher ups. You know, I'm not allowed to talk about these things. I tried to order these tests and insurance said I could not order them. I mean, these people in mainstream medicine are saints, in my opinion. They are doing the hero's work of trying to help people. I mean, most of these people go in, I think, with good intentions, you know, to want to help the human body and humans. And ultimately it can be corrupted by time and money, and insurance is a huge one, right? You're not allowed to do what you want to do as a practitioner. Right. And so for us also, as far as creating doctor as ally, beyond sort of knowing what your goals are and what you hold health and wellness to be, what your concerns are, is remembering that they are limited in a lot of ways in their scope of practice right now. And so finding people that think outside the box, you know, like I think is really important. And really interviewing your doctor. If you have the capacity, I mean, some of us, like for instance, me, I've never even met my doctor. I'm working with the medical assistant, but because I'm very clear about what I want out of the experience, I'm fine with that. Because she listens to me, we have a chat about it, and she orders the test that I want. You know, granted, I have medical training, so for me, that's easy. But I watch other people, you know, like Tantra, for instance, she doesn't have medical training, but she's very clear about her goals and if the doctor can get on the side of that, they do well together, right? So I would hope that you have the luxury of finding a doctor who you can interview and get on the side of, or the doctor is just good enough that you don't care because you're clear about your goals and those goals are being met, which it sounds like none of that has happened.
I don't know, actually, because we haven't known each other for a long time. I've had several interruptions in insurance coverage, whatnot, so it's made it bumpy. So I don't know. She seems very lovely. What I'm hearing from you is on my side, which is so basic that I'm almost, I'm not going to allow myself to be ashamed of myself.
No.
I'm almost like I could go there. Basic kindness, the conscious awareness of what I mean by kindness is kindness towards a human being, appreciation of her hard-won expertise. And it never occurred to me to be as clear as you're talking about what are the goals, and the doctor doesn't ask it either. No. It's not on all those forms, even though they're saying, please be detailed. My mind was never steered. It didn't occur to me naturally. And my mind was never steered by one of the intake questions of, you know, what are your goals? Because my goal, what if I'm using lose weight as, okay, this is something I can measure to know if I'm accomplishing these other things. So losing weight might be a measure for the cultural reasons of I'm supposed to look a certain way, or for I'm using this to measure or quantify, am I succeeding? Because I don't know how the heck to know how, how am I supposed to know? And so, but being clear what my goals are gives her the opportunity to say back to me however she would adjust that.
I think that's great.
I mean, what you're saying to me is beautiful training. In fact, you know how they do portals these days.
Oh,
You
yeah.
get a reminder for your appointment. And so I've actually just decided, look, if my appointment is limited to 20 minutes, that's hardly enough time to even say hello in my world. So I use the little send your doctor a message thing.
Yeah, great.
They gave me some information that helped me accomplish this thing. So I just used it and said, thank you. I just wanted you to know it worked. I don't know if other people do that, but I just decided I'm going to do that. And things like that. So I can now go in there, and my next appointment, I can make sure to say these things. I can make sure to figure it out on my side. What are my goals? And do I have to have a tier? First this one, if my ultimate goal is here, first this, then this, then this, to get to the overarching one. I can be much more kind. It's so basic. It's like being in the workplace, good with my colleagues.
Yes.
I'm really shocked at how fundamental what you're saying is, and how much I never thought.
But Deb, if we think about trauma, right? Everyone has had a traumatic experience with the doctor.
Yeah.
And everyone's been disempowered in the medical field. And so it's hard not to go into those situations with some level of PTSD, right? And if you think about society as being hierarchical, we are definitely not the empowered ones in those interactions, right? So for me as a healthcare practitioner, I think all the time of my place of power and privilege because of my training and degree.
Yeah.
And how do I really work to empower my patients so that they feel on equal footing? And yet I still want them to know that I am I'm going to hold them and I'm going to help lead them, but that they absolutely are a partner and empowered, and they ultimately are the wisdom source, really. Right? You are the wisdom source of your own body. If you can get the mind-body connection and articulate what your body is experiencing. And that takes steps, right? Talk about steps. Embodiment is really important here. And we've talked, you and I individually about what does embodiment look like. But just for me, embodiment is being at home in your cells, right? And being able to feel that and being able to get information from your body to the mental mind, and likewise from the mental mind back into the body. So like if you're having anxiety, you use your prefrontal cortex to say, okay, actually right now is not the plague, or it's not the famine, you're actually okay, right? So all that stuff matters. And so just I love your idea of how do you prioritize your goals and what's the list. I think a list is really important. And I ask my patients to give me, if they write multiple things down, I'll say, well, what's bothering you the most right now? From a musculoskeletal perspective, that's really easy. What hurts the most right now? From a general wellness point of view, that might not be as easy because there's a lot of things, because everything works together, really. But two other concepts might be really helpful for you. One is the idea of outcome markers. So in health, we not only have goals or a list of complaints, right? But we also have outcome markers. So what's measurable of how you're doing better, right? And so outcome markers can be lab tests. They can be what the scale looks like. They can be it's called activities of daily living. Like before I couldn't walk a mile, now I'm walking 3. But what are the goals, and then what are the ways you measure that, and what are you looking for with your outcome markers? And that's something a doctor can help you with. We're trained in that. So for instance, losing weight, say, which to me, weight is I never ever want that to be a focus because it's so loaded in our culture, but let's just say it is, right? And the BMI whole situation, I mean, I'm obese on the BMI. So that can't work for me. If you look at the history of the body mass index and how we measure that, it doesn't work for a post childbearing woman or a postmenopausal. It's not accounted, age isn't accounted for. Anyway, there's just many reasons why that I don't pay attention to that.
Even though on those kind of screenings, they say, what is your age, your height, your weight, whatever.
Maybe age is accounted for with it, with what you're doing. In the classic BMI, from as far as what I've done, it's just height and weight.
Oh.
So I could be wrong about that, but that's, yeah.
Me too. I could be mixing something up too.
I don't love a number as being what defines us, but for you, you know, maybe a better outcome marker would be like a hemoglobin A1C.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is those change a ton too. It might be more, gosh, how do I just feel every day? And what choices are becoming easy for me, like food prep, versus before I couldn't be bothered to do that. I would just grab whatever was easy, you know, like to me, that's an outcome marker of wellness, where now I'm making my Instapot and I'm eating that soup every single day for lunch or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
That's a really incredible outcome marker. Sleep is a great outcome marker. How am I sleeping?
Right.
Do I wake rested? For me, one of my favorite questions is, when was the last time you felt really whole and healthy? And then to go back to that time, and what was your life like? And why were you feeling really whole and healthy? And what of that, you know, like when I was 25, I felt amazing. You know, there's certain parts of that I'm not going to be able to regain.
Yeah.
However, I remember that feeling of vitality. And where can I regain that vitality? So I want you to think about goals and then also outcome markers, and maybe even make a list, you know, what would my goals be? And then your doctor can help you with outcome markers also.
Yeah, because if I go in saying, this is what I think, because let's just say weight, because I was thinking of that as an outcome marker, like I said. It's kind of an indicator of, to me, in my untrained mind, it's an indicator of, am I adjusting my eating? If I'm adjusting my eating, then I'm making more peace with food prep, these kind of things. I'm also exercising or moving better or more. That's how my mind is. But if I go in and say this to her, she can say, let's think about it differently. Let's have the A1C. I get what you're saying. For anybody who may not know, that's the register of blood sugar, I think is kind of right?
Yeah, a 3-month marker. So it's a really great marker because it gives you data from a 3-month period.
Yeah. So she might say, let's focus on the A1C instead, or, you know, track what you're eating. She may say something else that gives me a better way to flesh it out in my life. And yeah. And if sorry.
I was going to say, and not let the mental mind sabotage, right? Because if you're getting on the scale every day, that is a recipe for absolute mental sabotage, because it is aggravating as crap. I mean, my weight will fluctuate 4 to 5 pounds just where I am in my cycle, you know, and what we eat and what gets retained, you know, like if we're sensitive to something and we get some edema because of it, some swelling, like that will show on the scale. So that is a very aggravating, potentially, you know, outcome marker.
Yeah. And it also, when you just said that, like, hold on a minute, trying to get my thought. It makes things too mechanistic.
Yeah.
That's what, as opposed to holistic, where you're including, did something that you're sensitive to affect your system?
Right.
Not that you have to sit there and analyze everything all the day long, but it's a different awareness.
Yeah.
Right.
And how are we, like, I don't know about you, but I am really feeling this weather and this winter and this pulling in, and I mean, I've felt quite uncreative in the last few weeks because I'm like, I just want to hibernate, and then I'm also noticing probably my thyroid's a little lower. They go lower in the winter. My hands and feet have been more cold, so then I'm looking at that. But my thinking is, gosh, I am at the effect of a lot of systems here. I'm at the effect of the weather, the season. I'm at the effect of then my thyroid and how it responds to the season and the weather. I'm at the effect of, and then so how can I do my best with all these and know that, like, for instance, my scale is probably going to go up 4 pounds for a while, because I'm in this sort of hibernation time, and not be worried about that or feel that's a form of failure on my part, but to kind of expand that out and go, oh, okay, well, because of how I'm connected and sort of at the effect of multiple things right now, this is my experience in my body, and I'm not going to focus on those 4 pounds right now.
Yeah.
I mean, but I still weigh myself because I do use it as a marker for me still. It's a good outcome marker. It does let us know, like, oh, okay, going a little overboard, or,
But just not, I can see how you're, what you're saying is making that marker not just more malleable, but more realistic for including all kinds of other components of life.
Exactly. And what we're
mechanistic, like I was holding it.
Yeah. And also to use it as a place of empowerment, because
yes,
because it is tied to everything, and it does help us make decisions. And I feel like, so this is the other thing I think is important, is that, I have pain in my body. I have some funny things like a whole extra lumbar vertebra that I manage, and relatively it bothers me nothing, in the grand scheme of things, but it's still, I have to manage it. Otherwise it could be a big problem. And because I know what it is, number one, and I know how to manage it, it's not scary. And a lot of people too talk about mind-body connection when they have pain, or they have a blood result that doesn't make sense, or they're gaining weight and they don't know why, or they can't lose weight. Mentally, it's very frightening because we feel out of control. We don't know. And then you go to the doctor, they tell you just to take Advil or to exercise more. It's ridiculous. So also, I don't know exactly how, but I think finding your healing team for me is really important, and luckily the internet is free, and there's a lot of great information on the internet and a lot of bad information, but just how can we turn these things that we think are deficiencies or problems into places of empowerment where the body is speaking? Like my left sacroiliac joint starts giving me, being painful. It starts talking to me, and then I go, oh, okay, what have I done? What am I doing? What do I need to do differently? What kind of therapy do I need to go seek out? Do I need to go get an adjustment? Do I need to, what do I need? And then it becomes kind of a neat relationship where I actually feel quite empowered, because even though there's problems, quote problems, I have a through line. I know how to manage it so far, So I don't know if that's helpful, but
yeah, it really puts a lot of things for me in a different perspective. One of the things, though, is there is a lot of bad information out there on the internet. I'm not a medical doctor. This is one of the things I caught myself in this the other day. It's a good thing that a lot of psychology, for example, filters into the popular culture, that people are becoming more aware, more self-aware. But then there's the phenomenon of even my clients, my teen clients would say, oh man, they're really bipolar and they need this and this. I'm like,
oh yeah.
So I caught myself in that with looking up something in terms of the physical body, caught myself in the exact same phenomenon, and then realized, wait a minute, I can't remember the exact thing, so I can't
Yeah.
remember. But I caught myself doing the same phenomenon as my teens were doing. And I thought, I really don't know. But then it did become frightening because I don't know. So I don't know if I'm making a good choice, a bad choice, how it all combines. You can't keep your doctor on speed dial.
Yeah.
Even
I
something
know.
is, I keep going back to the potassium thing because
Yeah.
that was really recent. And if I had known that 20 years ago, if somebody had bothered to give me basic education on nutrition, which I didn't have, here I am, a privileged white person with no, very little basic education on nutrition other than eat your greens, and I have no idea what could have been prevented or you're using the word managed. I'm going to use the word partnered with.
Mhm.
How would I have just known, these things that,
Right.
and it's so interesting that traumatic stress lodges in the body so much, and yet experientially there's such a separation of mind and body. So there's a big disconnect, and that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. And, Deb, I think one of the ways to like listening to you, because it's true, how do we filter through this information? And even for me in my training, it's still a constant issue of how do I filter through what I think is relevant and real and true and what I don't, right? And a lot of that is how does it register in our bodies, right? How does it work in our bodies? And so maybe we experiment with multiple things and then we see what works for us. Like even if you were trained in nutrition as a child, you would have been trained in the food pyramid of like eat all these carbs. So, and now we have paleo and keto, which also aren't necessarily great solutions, And so I think it's really going back to having a register for wellness and then what works in your body for you.
And you're talking about it like if I was in the garden, it would not bother me that pruning is a repetitive part of the garden. Yeah, it's a chore. It is. It's just the way it is. That weeding is a repetitive phenomenon, and it's going to happen differently from the seasons. It just wouldn't bother me. So you're talking about it from that point of view. This is a piece that I'm really getting from you of using my mind. As I'm listening to you, I can tell I'm hearing you from what a chore. This is awful. I don't wanna, all those things. You're talking about it from, it's no different than that I would weed around a particular plant because I want a certain outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Using my mind to, like you're saying, be empowered. And it's just part of the, I can't find the word I want, but there's a process where it's mutually enhancing, I guess, partnership. I keep coming back to that. And using my mind to change the paradigm I'm coming from.
Well, and remember realities of unity. Everything's a part of everything else. Everything's in relationship, everything with everything else. Everything has a place. Everything's always moving to the next greater whole, right? We come from that reality. And then my prayer for you would be that you really develop a mental thinking about what wellness is for you is, and then also a body register.
I'm going to write that down because I'm actually going to, for those who may not know that are watching, she's referencing the templates, the language of creation templates. And one of them would be craving what wellness is for me is. And that's a very powerful tool. All the templates are very powerful tool to use in a number of every dimension of life. I'm going to
Yeah.
write that down. So you
So,
said,
right, yeah. And then also, Deb, I think the other piece that is really easily accessible to everybody is doing like a guided, doing some meditations, like guided meditations around being in your body. And I don't know exactly how, Insight Timer is a free app that has a lot of guided meditations. I really love hands-on healing for this. I go to people and I personally treat people in a way that I want them to experience what being embodied is. So I don't know for you if you could do that through guided meditations, or you go actually find a few healers that touch you and help you really feel what it feels like to be embodied in a way that's comfortable and safe and empowering for you. And to really think about that nurturing and feeding and tending to that relationship with the mind and the body. And then coming to your practitioners, coming to your ideas of well-being, letting those shape and evolve as you really, really get comfortable in yourselves. Because most people aren't with trauma or with pain or with, inflammation. Most people, we don't live in our bodies very well, especially as women, right? And even if you haven't had personal trauma, there's collective trauma, there's ancestral. I mean, it is just a trauma-rich world that we live in. And how to really, it's really just like switching slipstreams, like slipping into another stream of consciousness. And for me, I just love realities of unity, right? But how do you just jump from these realities of separation to the realities of unity, where everything is in relationship to everything else? And then how do we really live cellularly in those relationships and see the connections, right? Or feel the connections.
Yeah, that's
however you register.
That
you think
whole
of it.
other conversation.
Right.
But we've got like 4 minutes.
Okay.
So what you said there, several things that you just said about finding someone to, or some way to experience being embodied, made me think of, that's a coming aware, that's a awakening process. It could be spiritual awakening. It could be, it's any of several kind of aha moments that what you just described. And it's a big deal. So now in these last couple of minutes, what would you say about accomplishing wellness in the face of, or not, alongside of awakening? I'm not saying that very well. You know what I'm talking about?
So this has been my conversation with Tantra for 7 years, and she has a phrase that she says, awakening is a biological experience. And that is absolutely true. And your awakening can be forced by your biology. Your awakening can be more mental, moving into the biology, which might be more like, for me, my awakening happened through panic attacks in my body, that then my mind I needed to learn mentally what was happening and register that as an awakening, instead of just I was dying. I think there's multiple ways, obviously, and for you, it's going to be more using your mind to register your awakening physically and really feeling into that biology, feeling into that matter. And it happens in multiple ways because we're multidimensional beings,
Yeah, right. It could be very, very individuated. We've got like 1 minute. So I just want to say this is I noticed recently I was trying to study out and write about some psychology ideas, just trace them out for whatever it was I was doing. And every time I did that, I ended up in a body conversation.
Yeah.
I've never been so surprised, and I couldn't get away from it. It would lead me to, something body related. So, all right, we're at the end of our time together. Thank you so very, very much. I personally have benefited, and I actually believe that this is a very common set of questions and inquiries and needs out there. So I thank you so very much for your time and expertise, contribution to creating a world.
Thank you. I'm happy to be part of it and hope that this ripples out in massive ways.
Me too. I know it's going to, between me and my doctor, that's for sure.
Good.
That is for sure. It's really made a big difference. So
And that's it. That's a positive outcome marker right there.
yeah, yeah, for sure.